बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम क़ालू सुब्हानका ला इल्मा लना इल्ला मा अल्लमतना इन्नका अंतल अलीमुल हकीम. We started with the ventilation. So far we have done about 6 lectures on the ventilation. And this one is, if we have put the patient on a ventilator, how would we monitor the patient? What are the different parameters we should look at? So this is very important. Putting on a ventilator is no problem, but maintaining on ventilator and maintaining the physiological basis of patient, that's very important. So out of this, if I look at it, if you put on a monitor, there are two sections. One is a general monitoring. Every patient who is in the ICU, we monitor these things like hemodynamics. What includes hemodynamics? Blood pressure, pulse, capillary refill time, if you have a central venous catheter, central venous pressure, arterial pressure, continuous arterial pressure, intermittent arterial pressure, peripheral temperature. All these things are included in the hemodynamics, in which you always say vitals are normal. Vital में एक respiratory system भी आ जाता है. Then renal parameter, urine creatinine almost every day we do in ICU, and hepatic functions also, if indicated. Otherwise, routinely on the first admission, we always do the hepatic function. Then if it is required, then we can do it daily or weekly. Then gastrointestinal function also. We have to look at the motility of the gut, and because we have to plan our enteral nutrition. So gut is very important organ. It is an organ, it is not a tube. Starting from here, finishing at the anus, if we think it is a tube, no, it is an organ. It's a very important organ. It's an endocrine organ also. So we'll have to look after the gut also. Then neurological assessment, which we do in every patient, every day. Not only those patients who have got stroke or other thing, but other patients also, we look at the nervous system also, and we should do the neurological scoring also, Apgar scoring. So not Apgar scoring, the Glasgow scoring. So these are the general. Then specific to lung is gas exchange. This is the first. We'll do this one by one. Then mechanics of lung. Then breathing workload. Then neuromuscular function. It's quite a big list, but these are very important to see whether the ventilation we are doing in this particular patient, are we doing adequately or not. Now, if we look at the gas exchange, first gas exchanges, we can do the invasive monitoring, and we have transcutaneous monitoring. Now, transcutaneous monitoring is out of fashion. We used to put the needle under the skin and look at the SpO2. And this invasive monitoring could be continuous analysis or could be intermittent analysis also. And in gas exchange, what we see? In every patient, we look at the oxygenation status of the patient, and we look at the ventilation status also. Now, ventilation, when we use the word ventilation, we should think about the carbon dioxide. Ventilation is related to carbon dioxide, very little related to oxygen. In oxygenation status, we'll have to look how much oxygen we are giving to the patient. At what pressure we are giving oxygen to the patient. It means we need to know the FiO2 and PiO2 also. Then when the gases, oxygen reaches in the alveoli, what is the pressure over there? That's called P big AO2, partial pressure of oxygen in the alveoli. Then we look at whether the oxygen has passed through the alveolar capillary pathway to the blood, and what is the pressure of oxygen in the plasma? That is called P small AO2. So it means oxygen traveling there. Then we have to see that this is the partial pressure of oxygen, and this is the amount of oxygen we are giving to the patient. What is the ratio? So we take the ratio of partial pressure of oxygen in the arterial blood by partial pressure of oxygen in the alveoli. And second ratio is partial pressure of oxygen in the blood and the percent saturation of the hemoglobin, oxygen we are giving to the patient also. And these two ratios are very important. Then we look at the SpO2. SpO2 is percent saturation of hemoglobin. And there are two words, SpO2 and SaO2. What is the difference? SaO2, saturation of arterial oxygen, and SpO2 is saturation of hemoglobin. What is the difference? There are two words that are used in the books. Actually, SpO2 is actual the SaO2, but it is taken by capnography. It is taken by pulse oximetry. So pulse oximetry tells us about SpO2. But otherwise, what is it telling? SpO2 is telling about the SaO2. It's almost the same thing. There is a little difference. Then we'll look at the DO2, delivery of oxygen to the tissue. The whole objective of oxygenation is you take oxygen from nose or mouth up to the tissue level. How much is it delivered to the tissue? Then we have to look at that how much oxygen has been taken by the tissues. That is called BO2, the amount of oxygen which has been taken by the tissues. Because that you can only know if you look at the DO2 of venous blood. Then you take the DO2 of venous blood from the DO2 of arterial blood. That difference has been taken by the tissues. Nowhere else it can go. So that is around about 25% of the total DO2 which is taken. Now, if the oxygen has been taken by the tissues, now we'll have to see whether tissues are using it or not. How would we know? Because the metabolism is going on all the time. If oxygen is not there, then it will be anaerobic metabolism. If oxygen is there, then it's aerobic metabolism. Now, if it is aerobic metabolism, then there won't be any lactate production. But if it is anaerobic metabolism, without any oxygen, there will be lactate starts going up. So that will indicate us oxygen has been extracted, but it is not being used, like in cyanide poisoning. Cytochrome oxidase is not functional. Right, so then on the ventilation side, we look at the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the blood, PaCO2. Now, then carbon dioxide has passed through the alveolar capillary pathway, has gone into the alveoli. And what is the pressure of carbon dioxide in the alveoli? That is called PeTCO2. That's very important also. We have to look at the difference. Then we do the capnometry. Now, what is capnometry? Capnometry is the process by which we look at the carbon dioxide concentration. And the apparatus which helps us to do is called capnograph or capnogram. Capnograph. And capnogram is the the graph which we look at it. That is called. These are two confusing words, capnograph and capnogram, and this whole process is called capnometry, right? Now, gas exchange oxygenation still. Now you have got FiO2, oxygen going in at the nose or through the tube, and it goes up to the alveoli. And how it is diffusing? It is diffusing in the gaseous media. Here is the law of physics applies. Law of diffusion in the gaseous media, which is Graham's law of diffusion. Then from alveoli, the oxygen passes through the alveolar capillary pathway. It is all water. Alveolar capillary epithelium, that is water. And then endothelium, interstitial compartment, that is water. Then capillary endothelium, that is water. Then plasma is water. It passing through the liquid. So then another law of physics, which is called Henry's law of diffusion, that applies over here. So ultimately it goes into the blood. Then if you look at that, FiO2 can be analyzed by oxygen analyzer. And olden days they used to ask what are the structures of oxygen analyzer, what is the basic principle on which they are measuring it. I don't know whether they are asking the part 1 or not. Then we look at the PaO2. PaO2 is very easy to calculate. If you know the FiO2 and you convert it into PiO2, then for PiO2, carbon dioxide come into alveoli, you take it out of it. Then that's what is left, that's called P big AO2. Very easy to calculate. But these computers where we analyze our blood gases, where we analyze our blood, so they automatically do it. But you should be able to do mathematically yourself also. In olden time we used to do ourselves. But now the computer is helping you. It doesn't mean you should become ignorant. You should know how to calculate yourself also. So then look at the A gradient. Now, there are some derived parameters from this. You know the partial pressure of oxygen in the arterial blood divided by partial pressure of oxygen in the alveoli, and partial pressure of oxygen in the blood divided by fractional inspired oxygen concentration. You take their ratio, then you look at SaO2 or SpO2, then oxygen has gone into the blood, has combined with the hemoglobin. Now hemoglobin is there to accept it, but there are three conditions on which the hemoglobin takes the oxygen. It's called oxygen dissociation curve. Oxygen dissociation curve is nothing but it is a association of partial pressure of oxygen in the arterial blood with % saturation of hemoglobin. So it's a curve representing like this, right? It is not linear curve, a linear graph. Now there are three factors which affect the integrity of oxygen dissociation curve. One is the pH, and other is temperature, and third is 2,3-diphosphoglycerate. Now this pH, if the temperature is high, if the pH acidity is high, or if the 2,3-DPG is high, oxygen dissociation curve shifts towards the right. It means it is in dissociation mode. It is in a giving mood, not taking mood. If the temperature is low, if the person is alkalotic, and if the 2,3-DPG level is low, it shifts towards the left. It means it is accepting it. It is not in a mood to dissociate, it is in a mood to associate. The both extremes are bad. If the hemoglobin is not in a mood to accept it, or dissociation curve has shifted towards the right, it means the hemoglobin will not carry much oxygen. Partial pressure will be high, but % saturation will go down. It means bulk of oxygen is carried by hemoglobin. It means it will not be carried. So if it shifts towards the left, it means take up the oxygen. When the same blood reaches to tissue, it will not give oxygen to the tissues. And you look at the PaO2 is normal, saturation is normal, but the patient is still having a high lactate. It means hemoglobin is not giving oxygen to the tissue. There is anaerobic metabolism going on. So all these parameters we will have to see in relation to oxygenation when we are looking after the patient on a mechanical ventilator. It's very simple to put on them on the ventilator, but it's very difficult to monitor the patient, or it's very important to monitor the patient. Minute to minute monitoring is very important. If the patient is on ventilator, nobody should leave the patient unattended. There should be the nurse or a doctor sitting over there and monitoring continuously. We take it, we are not that vigilant. We ignore it, but it should not be ignored, right? Now, still on oxygenation. Now, total oxygen content of arterial blood, which is called CaO2, content of oxygen in the arterial blood. If you multiply with 1.3 with the hemoglobin and multiply with the saturation of hemoglobin, then add to it the dissolved form, 0.0003 into partial pressure of oxygen in the arterial blood. That will give you the total quantity of oxygen which is carried by the blood to be taken. This is called DO2 also, if you multiply with the cardiac output. So first of all, you look at the content in 100 cc, then you multiply with the cardiac output, then it becomes Q is the cardiac output, Q into CaO2. That will give you total amount which is taken up by the blood, which is 540 mils per minute per square meter. How much is the surface area of your body? How much is it? 1.7 square meter. Normal adult or normal adult lady or man, it should be around roughly 1.7 square meter. So they calculate according to per square meter. So total body is a little bit, you multiply with 1.7, that will be the total one. Right, same is the VO2. You multiply the cardiac output with the content of oxygen in the arterial blood minus the content of oxygen in the venous blood. So it will be only 130 mil. 130 mil, and the total quantity which reaches to the tissue is 540. Out of that, 130 is taken by the tissues. So it means around about 25% is taken by tissues, and that is used by the tissues. Then oxygen extraction ratio, which I told you, VO2 divided by DO2 multiplied by 100, it's about 24 to 25%. So it is mathematically you can calculate it, and what is happening to at a tissue level. It's very easy. It's not difficult, but you will have to concentrate on it. So if oxygen extraction ratio is reduced, there could be two reasons. Either the metabolic rate is less, or temperature is hypothermic patient, or there is a vasoconstriction, and total amount is not reaching there. So, or the tissues are not ready to accept the oxygen from there, so very little is extracted. So when little is extracted, metabolism is going on all the time. When metabolism is going on all the time, it will be anaerobic metabolism. When there is anaerobic metabolism, there will be lactate production. So the lactate will give you most of the information. Our blood gas analyzer, which is lying in the ICU, that's a beautiful analyzer. It gives you the complete picture of the blood. And if you look at the lactate, and you can see if the patient comes, the lactate is high, patient is in a shock condition, where it is cold, you start giving them oxygen, start warming the patient, normalize the blood pressure. Then you again take the blood gas and you see lactate was 2.5, now the lactate is 1. You can see the improvement immediately. So whenever you hold the blood gases from the blood gas analyzer, so you should look all the parameters in the same sequence as I told you. First of all, you look at the acer-base status of the patient. Then you look at the derived parameters and try to analyze why like this, why like this. You have to try to find the answer, why there is a change. You will definitely get the answer. If you just look at this, काफ़ी ऑक्सीजन उठा के रख दें या कहें कि एसिडिटी इतनी है रोक के रख दें, there is no use. You analyze everything. You must have seen when I look at it, I take a little bit of time to analyze it. I start from the top to the bottom. So you should always do on every patient, because then it will become your habit to analyze each parameter which has been given to you by the blood gas analyzer, and try to analyze it. You will get your answer there. Right, so these are very important parameters: CaO2, DO2, VO2, and oxygen extraction ratio, and looking at their percentages. Now it's just a diagrammatic presentation. If you look at the oxygen dissociation curve on your left side, this one, this is of arterial blood. So we have got a relationship of partial pressure of oxygen in the arterial blood to a percent saturation of hemoglobin. Now if you look at the venous blood, you look at the PVO2, partial pressure of oxygen in the venous blood, with the SVO2, saturation of venous hemoglobin. So this is also oxygen dissociation curve. But this is of venous blood, this is of arterial blood. Now here the oxygen cardiac output, the blood goes into the artery, into the capillary, the oxygen dissociates out, carbon dioxide comes in, and hemoglobin saturation SVO2, then it comes out. So this is what happened exactly in the body also. And if you look at the DO2, DO2 is nothing but cardiac output or total blood volume into hemoglobin multiplied with saturation. And if you look at oxygen extraction ratio, that VO2 over DO2 multiplied with 100, then you look at the VO2. VO2 is the total blood volume plus saturation minus SVO2. It's very simple. All blood gases will tell you. Now, if you go into numerically, how much is oxygen delivered to the tissues per minute? 520 to 720 mils per minute per square meter. Then if you look at how much is oxygen taken up, 110 to 160 mils per minute per square meter. Then how much is oxygen extracted? 22 to 32%. This is average. Then how much is the normal serum lactate? 0 to 4 milliequivalent per liter. Then how much is the mixed venous VO2? 33 to 53 millimeter of mercury. Then how much is the mixed venous SO2? That is 68 to 77%. Now, before you look at the abnormal thing, you must know the normal value. It applies to every parameter. If you look at the CBC, you should know the normal thing, then you can only diagnose the abnormal thing. Same way is the ABGs also, same with the oxygenation status also. You should know the normal first, then you compare it with your present result, and then you know what is the abnormality and how grave is the abnormality. Now, still on oxygenation status. Now, this is oxygen dissociation curve, which is oxygen delivery to uptake oxygen, that is oxygen extracted. So this represents different portion. On this curve, you see when the patient is in shock, up to what level, at what level of DO2 delivery and at what level of extraction of oxygen, the patient remains in a shock. Shock, what is a shock? It is a failure of circulatory system to supply the oxygen to the tissues or satisfy the not that patient is in hypotension. Now, this is just a little representation. Now, if you look at the pulse oximetry, there are a few things which affect the SpO2. Carboxyhemoglobin. If there is carboxyhemoglobin, what happens with the carboxyhemoglobin? Carbon monoxide has gone, then it has got 200 times more affinity for hemoglobin than the oxygen. जाके occupy कर लेती है उसको, but it will give you wrongly high SpO2. तो पेशेंट आते हैं स्मोक से जले हुए आते हैं, उनको देखें SpO2 बड़ी हाई है, बड़ी ऑक्सीजन है उसको. तो same way with the methemoglobin. Methemoglobin is oxidized hemoglobin. Because this hemoglobin, which is we are looking at SpO2, this is oxygenated hemoglobin. It's not oxidized. For oxygenated, you don't need to have a chemical reaction. रुई की तरह ऊपर लग जाती है, चिमट जाती है हीमोग्लोबिन के 4 रिंग्स के ऊपर ऐसे बैठ जाती है, फिर उठा देती है झटका दे के जब टिश्यू पे जाती है. लेकिन when it is methemoglobin, it means a chemical reaction has taken place. You will have to give reducing agent to get rid of methemoglobin, right? So it is oxidized hemoglobin. It can give you the wrong saturation also. Then if you give dyes, intravenous or intramuscular, then nail polish जो आप लगाते हैं रोजाना, nail polish, it can give you wrong SpO2. It will not give you the exact SpO2, right? Then anemia, hemodilution. It should not affect. Actually, hemodilution or anemia should not affect the saturation. It is telling you saturation of hemoglobin, whatsoever is the amount of hemoglobin present. You can have a 100% saturation with 4 grams of hemoglobin, and you can have 100% saturation with 12 grams of hemoglobin also, right? So, if this percent saturation of hemoglobin does not indicate the quantity of oxygen, but rather lowering the hemoglobin will tell you how much is the oxygen being carried from the blood to the tissues. Then deeply pigmented skin. It can give you the wrong also. Anemia, hemodilution, high intensity light, decreased perfusion. When there is a decreased perfusion, less blood is going to the tissue. So, what will happen to the saturation? In that part of where we are putting on the nail, if there is a pulmonary vasoconstriction, so less blood is going there, it will not give you the accurate saturation. The part where you have applied the pulse oximetry, so it should be warm, it should be normal temperature, then it can give you the exact saturation. Then motion, आप बैठे हैं तो ऐसे हाथ घुमाते रहें, तो it will give you wrong saturation also. जैसे बेड नंबर 11 वाला कर रहा, 11 वाला था. Now this is a typical graph of capnometry. So we should have a provision and the patient on ventilator to look at this graph also. Not theoretically, there are a lot of practical implications of this also. So we divide it into different curves, starting from A point, B point, C point, D point, and E point. Now, there are phases A to B, B to C, C to D, or then D to E. A to B shows the expired gases does not have a carbon dioxide, it is coming from anatomical dead space. Right? From B to C, as the carbon dioxide level is going up, it means it is a mixed place. It is coming from anatomical dead space as well as little bit alveolar gas also. From C to D, it's entirely coming from alveolar space. So the greater the amount coming, and so the greater the problem is there, right? So this graph is very important. Now, if you look at this, configuration of graph is also very important. So there are three phases: A to B, B to C, C to D. Those are important to analyze. Now, there is an angle also from D to B. If you draw a direct line from B to D, this is a direct line. And on the D, if you perpendicular line you carry it should be around about 100 to 110 degree. So, and there is an angle, this is called alpha angle. Beta angle is from A to D. That is alpha angle. They indicate different diseases. If beta angle shows rebreathing, and alpha angle shows about hypercapnia due to COPD or asthma, right? So this pulmonologists, they analyze it, and we also look at it, and we actually calculate the total amount of carbon dioxide also. So there is no need to go into capnometry. Like this is the job of the pulmonologist. Now this capnometry and ventilator support. So this tells us that there is a maintenance of stable ventilator support. It also helps us when we are weaning the patient off the ventilator. It also helps us to titrate the PEEP we are giving to the patient. It also helps us to detect the PEEP also. It also helps us to detect the esophageal intubation, or it is endotracheal intubation. The people who sometimes, they instead of the tube going into the trachea, they go into the esophagus. This is one of the tests that kitne breath pe karte hain test. How many breaths you test, where the carbon dioxide coming or not? So minimum is 3 to 5 breaths, not only one breath, minimum 3 to 5 breaths. But even again, when you have been ventilating the patient, so you put a mask on it. If the expired gases had gone from the lung, they can go into the stomach also through the tube, if the tube is in the esophagus. So that can give you wrong information also. But this is one way of testing, is whether the tube is in the esophagus or tube is in the trachea. Now, this is end-tidal carbon dioxide which is present in the alveoli. Carbon dioxide comes from the blood due to pressure gradient, and carbon dioxide diffuses very quickly into the alveoli, and it exerts pressure over there, which is called PETCO2, right? So there are factors which increase its level. One thing is increased carbon dioxide production. If there is a condition in which there is carbon dioxide production, like in fever, sepsis, bicarbonate administration, increased metabolic rate, or the person is having seizures, convulsions, there's more metabolism, more carbon dioxide production, more is coming to the alveoli, it will raise the pressure in the alveoli. So this is one of the set of causes which cause PETCO2 rise. Then decrease alveolar ventilation. It is coming there, but it's not being expired out. Like in respiratory center depression, if the patient is not on a ventilator, patient is breathing on his own. Then muscular paralysis. Patient is paralyzed but cannot vent it out. Then that also increases the PETCO2. Then hypoventilation. You are not ventilating properly, so PETCO, carbon dioxide diffusing very quickly, coming into the alveoli, it is exerting its pressure, but you cannot vent it out properly. That will also raise it. Then COPD patient, there is again, because they cannot vent it out, that accumulates into the alveoli, right? Then equipment malfunction, like rebreathing. If you got a longer circuit, so we usually actually induce hypercarbia by increasing the expiratory limb, also in these some other patients. Then exhausted carbon dioxide absorber. You have during anesthesia, we got a carbon dioxide absorber. Whatsoever carbon dioxide comes, it is absorbed through there, and the circuit goes again in. That is a closed circuit if we use it. So if the soda bicarb or the soda lime which has exhausted, so it will not absorb carbon dioxide. Same carbon dioxide will go into the lung again. That will raise the PeTCO2, then leak in the ventilatory circuit also, from expiratory to inspiratory side. If there is a leak, so the carbon dioxide going again and again into the lung. So these are the important causes of increase in PeTCO2. Right. Then there are causes in which there is a reduction in PeTCO2. Now, less carbon dioxide production and delivery to the lungs, like in hypothermia, like in pulmonary hypoperfusion, cardiac arrest, pulmonary embolism, hemorrhage, and hypotension. So it will be long time if I could go on explaining individual items. Then increased alveolar ventilation. You hyperventilate the patient. That's what we do sometimes. Hyperventilate during anesthesia also, and during ventilation also. If the COPD patient comes and his PeTCO2 is raised, how we can get rid of it? We hyperventilate the patient. We increase the tidal volume and increase the rate also. The two steps you take to lower the carbon dioxide. Increase the rate, respirate rate, that doesn't work, then you increase the tidal volume also. If you are giving 500, give 600, 700. Then you will see that it will start coming down. Then equipment malfunction again, ventilator disconnection, esophageal intubation, then complete airway obstruction, poor sampling, leak around the endotracheal tube, cough. So all these are causes of reduction in PeTCO2. Now we have to look at the gradient. As we look at the oxygen gradient, P big AO2 minus P small AO2, we look at the gradient on the oxygen side, but there is a gradient on carbon dioxide side also. P ACO2, that is alveolar carbon dioxide, minus, arterial carbon dioxide minus the PeTCO2, that is expired carbon dioxide. If the gradient is increased, what are the causes? Pulmonary hypoperfusion, pulmonary embolism, cardiac arrest, positive pressure ventilation, and high rate, low tidal volume ventilation. So these are the causes. If you think about it, then you can understand automatically. Try to find what is the reason, right? Then mechanics of lung. What is the mechanics of lung? There are two things only in mechanics of lung: compliance and resistance. Compliance and resistance. We'll have to measure the compliance and resistance if the patient is on ventilator. This is called measuring of mechanics of lung. And if you multiply the compliance with the resistance, this is called time constant. And time constant is the time taken to fill any vessel up to 60% of its capacity. Or some people say up to 67% of its capacity. That's called one time constant. So same alveoli is some sort of burden. It's a vessel. So if you fill up to 60% or 67% of its capacity, that's called one time constant. Filling depends how much is the resistance for the gas to come in and what is the distensibility of alveoli. That's called compliance. Compliance is nothing, volume change per unit change in pressure. Right? So this is a separate topic itself. Resistance is a separate topic of it. Resistance is nothing but resistance is equal to pressure over flow, like according to Ohm's law. Ohm's law of pressure. So say resistance is equal to pressure over flow. So you need to know two parameters to find out the third parameter. If you want to calculate the resistance, you should know the pressure, you should know the flow. If you want to know the flow, then you don't need to know the pressure as well as resistance. So this is a beautiful law actually. And other law is the Hagen-Poiseuille law, but that is about only for laminar flow. Right. So in mechanics, primary measurements and there are derived measurements. In primary measurements, airway opening pressure, then esophageal pressure, then auto PEEP. These three things are required to be known. Then in derived, compliance and resistance straight away. What are the different methods of measurement of compliance? What are the different methods of measurement of resistance? This is a very important question in a part 1. FCPS or FFARCS or FRCA. They ask these questions. What are the different methods? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, if you look at the mechanics, still on mechanics, there is a called equation of motion. Equation of motion, this opening pressure is equal to ventilatory resistance, ventilatory compliance, and plus pressure at the end of expiration. If you combine all these, this is called equation of motion. For this purpose, you need to know the 4 parameters. One is airway opening pressure, and other is esophageal pressure. Third is a tidal volume or minute volume. Then auto PEEP. Auto PEEP is a separate subject. So all these 4 parameters tell you about the mechanical or mechanics or parameters of mechanics. Now, if you look at this diagram, you should be, whenever you are ventilating a patient, you should go into graphical representation also. One graphical representation is you look at the volume and pressure curve, pressure and volume curve, that is called compliance curve. And the other is, this is called pressure and flow curve. And time, you calculate according to time. If you look, when the gases are going in, you look at this is the top, this is called dynamic inflation pressure, or it's called PIP, peak inspirative pressure. Then the flow stops. There is a zero flow, but this pressure starts coming down. At the end, there is pressure, at the end of inspiration, the pressure becomes stable, which is called plateau pressure. Pressure at the alveolar level, at the end of inspiration. This is very important pressure. If this pressure goes above 30, you should start worrying. There is going to be pneumothorax in this patient. When the expiration starts and comes down this level, this level, this is called end expirative pressure. So these 3 things are very important in graphical way to know. One is the peak pressure, other is the pressure zero, then other is pressure plateau, then is the end expirative pressure. So you can see any patient on the ventilator, even on our ventilators also. So you go into graphical representation. So I usually push on volume and flow, volume and pressure curve, the compliance curve. So that gives you a lot of information about this also. Then you can have this graphical representation also. So this will give you a beautiful picture and compare it. Minute to minute, go on comparing. That will tell you what's happening inside the lung. Nothing to do with the blood gas and nothing to do with other things, but it will tell you about the mechanics of lung, compliance and resistance, And most of the people, 99% people don't concentrate on this. They're only concerned, put the tube in, put on ventilator, take the tube out. Then say it's very difficult to take the patient off the ventilator, but you have not been managing the patient properly. This is very important to know the mechanics, mainly the mechanics of ventilation. If you go on monitoring during, it will help you take the patient off the ventilator. Otherwise, you will end up in complication. Now, airway opening pressure. Airway opening pressure means during passive condition, when we are ventilating a patient is paralyzed, patient is sedated. Patient is not struggling at all. That is called passive condition. So the airway reflects the mechanical properties. What are the mechanical properties? Compliance and resistance. When the patient is breathing spontaneously or partially breathing spontaneously during active condition, then airway opening pressure gives you information of work of breathing. Work of breathing is very important when we come back to weaning the patient off the ventilator. So these mechanics, knowing mechanics of ventilation are very important when you are monitoring the patient on the ventilator, and these are very important when you take the patient off the ventilator also. They will be helpful to you, otherwise you will have very lot of problem in taking the patient off the ventilator. Now airflow. You measure airflow by pneumotachograph. Have you ever seen pneumotachograph? Good, very good. So you put the pneumotachograph on the common limb or on the expiratory limb also. You can measure it. छोटा सा apparatus होता है, tell you कितना flow हो रहा है. फूंक मारते हैं उसमें देखते हैं. न्यूमोटैक पल्मोनोलॉजिस्ट के पास ओपीडी में रखे होते हैं. कहते हैं फूंक मारो, फूंक मारते हैं, कहते इतनी फीस दे दो, साथ ही काम चल रहा होता है. न्यूमोटैक जैसे पीक एक्सपिरेटरी फ्लो रेट भी निकालते हैं, लेकिन साथ न्यूमोटैक करो मारते हैं फूंक. It can give you information about tidal volume. It can give you information about minute ventilation. It can give you about the compliance and resistance, compliance of respiratory system. Now, inspiratory flow is due to pressure gradient of airway pressure, opening pressure, and pressure at the alveoli. Until everything flows according to the pressure gradient, whether it's a liquid or a gas. Even the solid things are also moving, but they cannot flow. But liquid or gas, they flow, but they flow according to pressure gradient, apart from physical laws which apply on them, right? आपने कभी देखा things flow always from higher pressure to lower pressure. कभी देखा पानी चढ़ता हुआ पिलर के ऊपर चढ़ गया हो, या सड़क ऐसे जा रही है तो पानी ऊपर चढ़ रहा हो? मैंने देखा है. हाँ, जिन की वादी पे जाए मक्का मदीना में तो आपको नजर आएगा, वहाँ पे आपकी कार ऐसी खड़ी, कार आगे भगाए जा रहे हैं आपको कुछ. So inspiratory flow is airway pressure minus pressure at the alveoli till the airway pressure, opening pressure becomes equal to alveolar pressure. Then the things stop, they stop flowing. Or another way, the rate of deceleration, if you decrease the rate of deceleration is decreased, because I told you on the previous lecture there are two types of flows you give, accelerating type or decelerating type. If decelerating type means you take the flow there and then gradually comes down. So accelerating is you gradually increase the flow in. Both has got its consequences, both has got its benefits and drawbacks also. Increase time constant. It means the product of compliance and resistance, there is increase in that. This indicates the pressure set is greater than the pressure at the alveoli. These are the minor things one has to look at the ventilator. It's related to physically looking at the ventilator. So solution is you increase the inspiratory time. If you increase the inspiratory time, you can bypass this thing and you can have your desired volume inside the lung, right? So, expiratory flow. You measure the expiratory flow also. Now, if the flow, during the expiration, if the flow remains constant, even if your inspiratory phase is finished, but your expiratory phase has started and the gases has come out asleep, but it is constantly coming. You can hear the hissing sound. That shows, it's very important, that shows that there is a hyper inflation of lung. It is a dynamic hyperinflation. It means there is some problem. Why the gases are not coming quickly? They are coming very slowly out. So, or the second possibility, if the gas period has finished, but the gases are still coming out, it means the patient has got some muscular power also, is struggling to push the gases out. So these two things you should keep in mind. During expiration, if the flow is continuously going on smaller amount, then if the flow is oscillating, you can do with auscultation, you can see these things, detect these things. If the flow is oscillating, aa jaye, ruk jaye, then it is some sort of retained secretions are there. You suck the lung, remove those secretions, because secretions are giving intermittent obstruction to the outflow. बाहर निकलने में उसमें रुकावट पैदा कर रही है, that's giving a noise or oscillation to the flow. So you suck the secretion. Now esophageal pressure is nothing but it is a representative of pleural pressure. Right? It's very easy to assess it. Whether you put the probe into the esophagus, in the lower third of esophagus, and you can measure the pleural pressure. Pleural pressure, and pleural pressure is very important to know, because in the first lecture I told you all the different pressures. That airway pressure, plateau pressure, interpleural pressure, then other esophageal pressure, which one is greater than which, right? So that's the big list. 8-10 मैंने बताए थे pressure, उनको देखें ज़रा ख्याल रखें उनका. Now esophageal pressure is equal to pleural pressure. So placement of catheter is in the lower third of the esophagus. Now we come to PEEP and auto PEEP. Now auto PEEP quantitates the amount by which the alveolar pressure at end expiration exceeds the level of PEEP set on the ventilator. For example, you are set on the 5 centimeter water. But आप देखें ऑटो पी में इट इज गिविंग 7. सो जो 5 से 7 तक है 2, दैट शोज अबाउट ऑटो पीप. देयर इज ए इनहेरेंट मोर ऑब्स्ट्रक्शन क्रिएटेड टू द गैस टू कम आउट. ठीक, सो खुद उसमें पीप क्या है? व्हाट इज द पॉजिटिव प्रेशर? ए पॉजिटिव एंड एक्सपिरेटिव प्रेशर. वी ट्राई टू रिस्ट्रिक्ट द एक्सपिरेशन टू keep this much pressure in the lungs, so the lungs should remain open, lungs should remain distended, alveoli should remain distended. But if you have set 5, but instead they are showing 7, so the 7 में से 5 निकाले, बाकी बच गया 2. This is auto PEEP. And auto PEEP का मतलब सोचना चाहिए, why there is developing auto PEEP? Either your expiratory time is low or there is obstruction to the expiration. So try to relieve the expiration and try to increase the expiratory phase so that you should be able to get rid of all the extra pressure which has built up because of auto PEEP. Right? इसको बड़ा minutely आप लोग इसको monitor कर रहे हैं. Now alveolar pressure is equal to जो alveoli का होता है end expiratory pressure जो होता है, that is equal to P plus auto PEEP, right? Now if PEEP I भी एक और लफ्ज होता है इस्तेमाल करते हैं, PEEP I, this is called intrinsic PEEP, is equal to P plus auto PEEP. PEEP plus auto PEEP इकट्ठे को PEEP I कहते हैं. ठीक है, ऑटो PEEP जो है वो अगर एल्वुलर प्रेशर में से जो आप PEEP आपने सेट किया वो निकाल दे, दैट इज ऑटो PEEP. Is it clear?
No.
No? Very good. So if you look at the alveolar pressure and you look at your PEEP, how much PEEP you have put in, if there is a difference, that means there is auto PEEP development inside developing. If you, by definition, PEEP I is nothing. इन दोनों को combine कर देंगे, PEEP plus auto PEEP, it means alveolar pressure is a PEEP I in that way. It means PEEP plus auto PEEP is equal to PEEP I. ठीक है, तो दोनों टर्मिनोलॉजी को क्लियर करने के लिए ऑटो PEEP which has accumulated more than the PEEP you have set in, and the PEEP I is a combined, both PEEP plus total PEEP. So that is a PEEP I. जो पिछले ज़माने में PEEP I कहते थे, आप इसको ऑटो PEEP कह देते हैं, ये कैसे है? लेकिन आपने उस पर you have to look at the go into the ventilator, that will tell you कि ऑटो PEEP है कि नहीं है उसमें, और वेंटिलेटर खुद ही कर देता है आपके लिए. ठीक है, इस ज़माने में हम PEEP पे डालते थे, ट्यूब डाली, उसके साथ सर्किट लगाया, एक्सपिरेटरी सर्किट के पोर्शन को पानी में डुबो देते, जितने सेंटीमीटर डुबाया हुआ उतनी PEEP आ गई उसको, क्योंकि दैट विल क्रिएट रेजिस्टेंस टू एक्सपिरेशन. द हायर द लेवल ऑफ वाटर, द ग्रेटर विल बी PEEP, द मोर विल बी द alveoli distended, द बेटर विल बी ऑक्सीजनेशन, योर PaO2 विल बी इम्प्रूव. मैकेनिज्म यही है, आप ये वेंटिलेटर कर देता है ऑटोमेटिकली, सर्किट बन गए, ये कर गए. जो 10 रुपये में काम होता था 20 लाख में होता है. ठीक है ना, वेंटिलेटर की कीमत 20 लाख है, 20 लाख में वो काम लेते जो हम करते बच्चों को करते अक्सर में. डाली ट्यूब, एक TP सर्किट लगा दिया, एक साइड पे ऑक्सीजन आ रही है, दूसरी साइड पे एक्सपायर्ड गैस जा रही है. यहाँ एक्सपायर्ड गैस है, उसको पानी में डुबो दो, दैट विल कॉज CPAP. अगर स्पॉन्टेनियस ब्रीथ कर दे तो जितने सेंटीमीटर वाटर होगा उतना ही वो उसमें PEEP डेवलप होगी. तो आप भी कर लें, बड़ा आसान काम है. ये नाक में डाला होता है, ऑक्सीजन दे रहे होते हैं, कहते PEEP डेवलप नहीं हो रही, वो मुंह खुला होता है, हवा उसमें से निकल जाती, प्रेशर नहीं बिल्डअप होता है, कहते PEEP नहीं, वेंटिलेटर में नक्स है. मुंह को तो बंद करें, मुंह बंद करेंगे तो अंदर प्रेशर डेवलप होगा. किसी का मुंह खुला रहते बोल के हवा निकालता जाएगा, प्रेशर नहीं बिल्ट होगा. ठीक है, तो इसलिए कहते हैं जो ज़्यादा बोलते हैं उसको मुंह बंद करो ताकि प्रेशर डेवलप हो अंदर. ठीक, राइट. ऑटो PEEP mechanism, in either it is due to increased tidal volume, or it is due to decreased expiration time, so or they are due to airway collapse. So that will cause dynamic hyperinflation. इसका treatment भी यही है. You decrease the tidal volume, then first of all you increase the expiratory time, give the gases to come out time. किसी किस्म की obstruction हो, whether it is obstruction, inspiratory obstruction, if there is obstruction, you increase the inspiratory phase. If there is expiratory obstruction, you increase the expiratory phase. Because obstruction cannot be bypassed by increasing the pressure. एक सुराख है fix, if it is a narrow, it doesn't matter how much pressure you put in, it will not push the gases through it, but you will increase the time by which the same amount you want to pass it through it. So it means you will increase the inspiratory period. Same way the gases are coming out. If there is an obstruction to it, you give longer time for the gases to come out. So this is a basic principle. If there is an obstruction, you treat the obstruction by increasing the time. If it is inspiratory obstruction, you increase the inspiratory phase. If you got expiratory obstruction, you increase the expiratory time. हम COPD वाले में यही करते हैं, एस्थमा वाले में यही करते हैं. एस्थमा में लो वॉल्यूम, टाइडल वॉल्यूम, स्लो रेट, increase expiratory phase. Let the gases come out. बड़ी जल्दी इंप्रूव करते हैं. अगर कहें कि हाइपोक्सिया हो रहा है इसको टाइडल वॉल्यूम और दे दो, फास्ट कर दो रेट, यू आर किलिंग द पर्सन. ठीक, इसके लिए डेफिनेट पैटर्न जो अडॉप्ट करते हैं. ठीक, compliance is nothing, volume change per unit change in pressure. Right, elastance is opposite to it. So I was looking at it, what is the force? What is the pressure? Mathematically, physics के लिहाज से, what is the pressure? It volume, force per unit area, not. So, what is elasticity? What is surface tension? You should चीजें आनी. What is surface tension? Force per unit length is a surface tension. Force per unit length. Force per unit area is the pressure. What is the force? Force is mass into acceleration. What is the acceleration? Basic. आजकल तो पहली जो बात कर लड़के को आते होगी. If you look at this graph, this is called pressure volume graph or the compliance loop. Now, it is a curvilinear graph. कर्विलीनियर ग्राफ, कर्व ऐसे करता है, ऐसे आएगा. ठीक है, ये ऐसे नहीं, लीनियर तो सीधा होता है ना. दो पैरामीटर लगा दिया आपने उस पर ग्राफ के ऊपर, उसमें सीधा रिस्पांस होगा, दैट इज कॉल्ड लीनियर. ये कर्विलीनियर ऐसे आते हैं. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल इन द स्टार्ट विद देयर इज कंप्लायंस ऑफ स्टार्ट. ठीक, ग्रेजुअली गोज हियर, देन सडनली फ्रॉम दिस प्रेशर इट गोज अप. जहाँ से इसको इफ यू draw the straight line from there and straight line over here, this is called P flex. Then the gases come out, this is called compliance of deflation. It comes back like this. This is a loop. This is called hysteresis loop also. Hysteresis loop also. So what we are, when we put the P, we look at this junction, P flex also. P should be slightly higher than that. Right? So add to this there. So you will get the better improvement, you will get the better, you will have the better, you will have a better distension of alveoli, you will have better oxygenation. Immediately आपको उसका असर होना नजर आना शुरू हो जाएगा. इसलिए मैंने I told in the beginning कि this lecture is skill. फिर मैं कहा skill का मतलब क्या है? Nobody knew it. Skill क्या होता है? Pressure volume curve. Now you have got a compliance at the start, compliance at the inflation, compliance at deflation, and there is a P flex. You should know what is a P flex. It's a very popular question in the part 1. You are very fortunate there is no viva in the part 1 FCPS. Because actually the people, those who have read it properly or who know the subject, they are judged in the viva. not judged on the multiple choice questions.